Over the last decade, we've seen a lot of changes made to the professional landscape of lacrosse. The old MLL days, although nostalgic, are a prime example of how not to run a professional sports league. Low pay, no player protection, poor medical health for players, as well as terrible travel accommodations are part of the reasons the MLL was so awful. With the founding of the PLL, lacrosse would have another chance at making a competitive league. And to give them credit, Paul and Mike Rabel did a great job at ushering in a new modern age for professional outdoor lacrosse. Players are making much more money than they did in the old MLL, and with ESPN picking up the league, there's even more revenue to go around. For example, the average MLL player was making only about $10,000 to $12,000 a season. Honestly, it's not even worth the hassle of traveling at that point. With pay that low, every player had to have a regular day job just to make ends meet. As of today, the average PLL player is making about $35,000 a year according to CNBC, which, although not anywhere near what even WNBA players are making, it's still livable, and if said player is also doing endorsement deals as well as participating in other leagues like the NLL, being a pro lacrosse player is actually a feasible career now. I remember watching Paul Rabel's vlogs all the way back in 2015, back when he had to have a normal day job as a real estate agent even though he was the most paid player in the league. Additionally, it was super interesting to see the side of Paul where he would have to rehab his own injuries and deal with his own problems on the side because the team wouldn't offer that support. It's just given me a lot more respect for Paul for what he's been able to do in the Premier Lacrosse League. With all that being said, there are still a ton of issues facing professional lacrosse today, and I wanted to cover one of the biggest ones with you all today. The biggest problem I see in lacrosse is the lack of unity across leagues, especially in the pros. The strained relationship between the PLL and the NLL is what I'm trying to get at here. For anyone not familiar, the PLL is the league for the outdoor game of lacrosse, and the NLL is the league for indoor. There's pros and cons with both. Now, I like the PLL a lot more because I played the outdoor game growing up, and if you played the indoor game, you probably like the NLL a lot more. For the outdoor game, there's a lot more room to maneuver, a lot more dodging, and you have a way wider field to play with, so it adds some different depth to the game. With the indoor game of the NLL, it's a lot closer quarters, so you have to be a lot better shooting, passing, and you have to be far more precise with all of those as well. What's even more interesting is they share the same players, they both stream to ESPN+, and they're both competing in the exact same market. Despite these similarities, they share a relationship akin to a messy divorce between a couple. They both take jabs at each other and look down on the other league, as if it's their little brother to the more professional league that they all have. It just feeds into a wider issue with lacrosse of this elitism of it being this rich, preppy sport, which is something that we have to get away from if we want it to actually go mainstream. And I know there will be some out there that say, well, we're mainstream, we stream to ESPN+. Lacrosse is not. As much as I want it to be, as much as I'm sure you want it to be, it just isn't. This is not me trying to come down on us lacrosse fans either. I just want to show how much progress we really do have to make for us to be that big sport we all know it can be. In both leagues, the PLL and NLL are guilty of taking jabs at one another. For instance, here's a good example. You all know I really like Paul Rabel, but in 2022 he was doing a podcast talking about the PLL. In it, he falsely claimed that Trevor Baptiste was, and I quote, the first black lacrosse MVP, professionally speaking. Totally forgetting the fact that Dane Smith had won the NLL's MVP award all the way back in 2016. Paul came under a little flack for this, and both Trevor Baptiste and Paul Rabel cleared the air that he was talking specifically about the outdoor game and the PLL, but it still miffed a lot of NLL fans across the board, understandably. There's also been a lot of reports that Paul Rabel hates the NLL, and that's just not true. He enjoys it, it's lacrosse, it helps grow the game, and he's showed as much. He's attended NLL games recently and put it all over his social media. And there's also been strides to remedy some of the issues these leagues have with one another. For instance, about 10 years ago when the MLL was still a thing, the MLL regular season would start with about 4 weeks still left in the NLL season, creating big issues for players who wanted to play in both. They would have to choose between the NLL or MLL, yet again making it super difficult to play both leagues and make being a professional lacrosse player feasible. This is something the PLL has remedied by moving their season into the summer so that you can play both a full regular season of the NLL and a full season of the PLL. Now there's also the issue of the championship series, but the more research I did on that, I really do think it's just one more way for Paul Rabel to get players that don't want to play in the NLL some extra money during the offseason. Also, just a suggestion, I would really like it if they could move the championship series out to more of the central US so that more people can attend it. I totally looked at doing a whole series for you guys on this channel of me going to the championship and everything, But it was played out in Baltimore, and I just couldn't justify myself flying all the way out there for that. I know a lot of West Coast guys are the exact same way. It's just so interesting when you look at other leagues like the NHL or the NBA or the NFL. They have a lot of collaboration between the high school to college to pro leagues to get players to move on up through, and to make it more financially feasible as they're making that move. Of course, I am not a business guy. I know Paul, Mike, and the investors at the PLL, and I know the owners over at the NLL are trying their best to grow the sport. But now and then I do have to scoff at the idea of grow the game when they're so hostile to one another for barely encroaching into their market share. For me, I just want to see more collaboration between both the PLL and the NLL. You could have special promotion nights and stuff like that because you're ultimately sharing players between one another. Why not? It all just plays into the same of it being detrimental to the actual growth of the game. They're all for growing the game if it's in their sphere of influence and it's going to affect their profit margins. But on the bright side, there's a lot of exciting things coming to lacrosse and some amazing creators that I know deep down absolutely want to grow the game to be as big as possible. I've been super lucky to get on a few phone calls with Mitchell Pelkey, who, if you're not familiar with, is the biggest lacrosse YouTuber in the game right now. He is as authentic and nice and as driven as you see in the videos, and I can absolutely attest, if you guys haven't already subscribed to him, go give him a sub and a like, and who knows, you might even see a video that's coming out in the future that him and I are working on. That would be kind of cool. Honestly, Mitchell Pelkey reminds me a lot of Paul Rabel 10 years ago and the type of content he would put out to engage people into the sport. Some other names for you are people like Connor Eck, Division 3 hero on Instagram. Hilarious guy, absolutely love seeing his comments on PLL posts, so make sure to give him a follow on Instagram and a subscribe here on YouTube. And again, how could I not mention No Context Lacrosse, dude's hilarious, and a ton of my Scotty Rogers jokes are in part due to him and his fan base. So there's a lot of reasons to be really excited about the future of lacrosse. My mantra in everything in life, especially with the sport I love, is be the change you want to see. For me, I absolutely love this sport and I want to see it go super mainstream. But if you, dear viewer, want to grow the game, give these guys some likes that I mentioned before, and even drop me a subscribe and a like. I would really appreciate it. We are at a really exciting time in this sport, and we can absolutely capitalize on it. But it does take some of us doing the legwork to get it done. But that is all I have for you fine folk. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe, make sure to drop a like, and check out those YouTubers I mentioned before. Another big shout out needs to go to Lax Farmer. He makes awesome lacrosse apparel. I am not paid to say this. I just like his shirts a lot. They've always been great, and it's fun to wear some lacrosse branded attire at work, out with friends. It definitely gets a conversation going. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I will catch you in the next one.